Hello and welcome back to Pay Down Debt Solutions. I'm Jen, and today I'll be going over with you more surrounding credit cards. We're getting a lot of comments about credit cards and about how credit cards are these horrible vehicles that get you into debt. And I'm here to tell you that I don't believe that at all, not one bit. So I want to go over with you because I know you're here because you have debts, right? You're here because you have debt and you are looking for a different way to handle your debt. If not, you wouldn't be swinging by this channel because on this channel, we teach velocity banking. So being that velocity banking is the form and the method that we teach, I want to go over with you why you would want to use velocity banking versus the traditional banking system that you're in. So today, we are going to be going over from a debt creator to a debt terminator. That is your credit card. You see, you guys, just because you are in debt and you are in debt because of the system, the banking system that you are in, it is not the vehicle that got you there. That same vehicle that got you into debt is the one vehicle that can get you out of debt. And that would be a credit card or any line of credit for that matter. Because lines of credit, such as credit cards, can be these amazing tools if used properly. So I'm going to show you a student scenario today. I'm going to try to make this video brief for you, but I want to show you how exactly you can use a credit card to get yourself out of debt. And you will do it faster. You see, the other problem is too, you guys don't even know how much debt you are in, number one. And number two, you have no idea of the length of time. That is something that I want all of you to look up on those credit cards that you're paying those minimum payments on. Look them up and see how long it's going to take you to get out of debt, because I'll bet you most of them are well over 4 years. And we are going to cut that time for you by choosing to use something different, something called velocity banking. All right, so that same debt, okay, that same debt creator, let's call it a debt creator that you're using, which is your credit card, that same thing can get you out of debt. And I'm going to show you today how to do that. So the same card that causes us to be in debt is the very same card that will get you out of debt. And it is because the fact that it is a line of credit. Okay, so lines of credit are calculated on an average daily balance. And when you use velocity banking and you deploy velocity banking, you are putting your income into that debt destroyer and you are running all of your expenses out, which in turn helps you free up cash flow that will combat that interest and help work your credit cards down and thus eliminating it faster. So here is a graph for you that I want to show you very briefly so that you can start to see and to think and to understand how this velocity banking works, okay? So what I have is the high balances here, and then I have the low balances for the month. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to pause for a minute, and I'm going to show you how the interest then is applied. Because of the average daily balance, what you're doing is you are reducing the amount of interest when you deploy the velocity banking strategy, okay? So that is how we get ourselves out of debt faster. So this is a depiction of the work on the board here that I'm going to show you very shortly. So give me a minute and I'm going to throw my interest in here and I'm going to show you how this works with the debt freedom graph. So the velocity banking strategy, when depicted in a graph, okay, you guys see the work over here that is on the board. And most of you know that when we deploy velocity banking, we are starting with a balance, okay? We're starting with a balance, and that balance is then worked down each month by putting your income into this line of credit and you're working your expenses out. So what happens is when we start our banking here, when we start our velocity banking, our balance is at $10,095. It is then dropped to $71.67 by putting your entire income onto that debt destroyer, okay? So your balance starts high and you're putting your income in, which drops it, okay? So it drops it immediately to the $71.67, as you can see here. And so what happens is our interest then is calculated on the average between those statement periods. So from statement cut to statement cut, your bank or your card issuer is then going to do an average daily balance of what the balance is from that statement period to the statement period. So with velocity banking, when we put our income in, we're dropping that interest immediately. and we're running our expenses out, which means our card comes back up, right? Our debt tool comes back up. But then the next month, the interest or the income hits again and drops us again. And then the expenses and the interest will bring it up a little bit. So you can see that very clearly here, right? So your high balance, your income comes in and drops it down to the 7167 from the 10,095. We have $165 of interest that is applied for that statement period. Then month 2 comes in and you've worked it back up because your expenses are coming out of that line, right? So you worked it back up to $95.99. But $95.99 is less than the $10,095 that we started with. So as again, I put my income in, it drops my balance to $66.71, okay? So I've dropped it again, and then the expenses will come out, and then we'll have the interest come out, and it's re-averaged again for me. So my interest is lower. So it's at 155. So my interest started at 165 for the first month. Then the second month, it came in at 155. Now the third month, you can see it's at 146. And then the fourth month, it's at 136. And you can see how the interest is going down because my income going into that card and then me running expenses out of that same card continuously drops because my payment is coming back and helping me work my balances down. So that is the overall picture of how velocity banking works. So let me show for you on the board with a case study, a student scenario of how this would actually look, okay? So my debt freedom graph here, you can see we started out with $10,095. The first month, our income came in and dropped us to $71.67, which means that our interest is then recalculated, right? And you can see it happen every month until we are paid off, okay? So the cool thing is when you see how long it would take them to pay this credit card, you see that the months here that it takes, and I will, spoiler alert, it's 13 months here, you're going to see how much faster they pay down their debt using velocity banking. So let's get into the student scenario today. Again, my name is Jen, and I am here to teach you guys velocity banking to help you get out of your debts much faster than living in that traditional banking system that doesn't help you one iota. Remember, you guys, it isn't the vehicle that causes your debt. It is the system, the banking system that you are trapped in. Until you learn a different way, you will continue to be trapped in that system. So I am asking that you try velocity banking, and you're about to see why. Okay, so let lines of credit lead, okay, and your debt elimination plan. So let these lines of credit be the ones, the things that lead, the vehicles that lead your debt elimination plan, because that is how you can get out of debt faster. It's lines of credit, never alone, always align from here on out. In my student scenario, we have a couple that has an income of $4,300. They have total expenses of about $4,100, meaning that they have $200 in cash flow at this moment. So they have a mortgage payment at $975, so it's $975 a month, and a car payment at $397 a month. Okay, so those are two of their debts here, and so I've totaled those for you. It's $1,372 just for these two loans. They have a BOA credit card, and the balance on that is $7,891. The payment is $215 a month. It is at 23%. That card, and this is why I want you guys to pay attention to how much these cards are costing you in time and money, okay? It will take them 5 years and 5 months for a balance of $78.91. They will pay in interest debt $5,875 in interest debt over 5 years for that card alone. Now, they also have a personal loan here at $5,337. They owe $176 a month on that. And it's at an 8.2% interest rate. It will take them, this loan has been going for a few years. I believe it's a 4-year loan, but they have 2 years and 8 months left to pay on that. And it will cost them $1,269 to finish out that loan. They've already paid interest. Now, they also have a Capital One credit card at $2,333. The payment on that is $70 a month as their minimum. 24% interest rate. It will take them 4 years and 8 months to finish that, and it will cost them $1,550 in interest. So in the situation that we have here in their scenario, we are looking at not including the car and the mortgage, okay? Didn't include those debts here in our totals. But if you add these up, we have $8,694 that we're going to be paying in interest debt over a period of time up to 5 years and 5 months. Now, their debt payments for just these three, okay, the loan and the 2 lines of credit, is $461. Now, wouldn't it be nice if we could add that back into our income? And there is a way to do that with Velocity Banking, and that's what you're going to see. So we know that their payments are $461 a month, and the total debt that they have for between these three is $15,561. So we are going to find a way to pay that off faster and save ourselves on interest debt. So in deploying Velocity Banking and letting you guys see the picture of what this looks like when we run our plan, I wanted to show you the debt freedom graph because sometimes I think this really helps it hit home, okay? So we are going to use credit cards to take care of this debt. Now, there's a lot of you out there that say, you know, that's great, Jen. I don't have a home equity available to me. I don't have any equity in my home. I can't use a home equity loan or a line of credit, I should say. I can't use a personal line of credit. But that's okay, you guys. Yes, those are the preferred tools to use. But if you can't use them and you don't have the availability, you can use your credit card all day long. You guys can do that. That is not a problem. And that is exactly how Dan and I started, okay? So in this case, these students are going to use the credit cards that they have. Now, what I want to let you know in this situation here is that this card has a limit of $12,000 on it, okay? So the BOA card has a limit of $12,000. Now, their Capital One card and their Bank of America, those are obviously credit cards. We've got a loan here. So our choices are Bank of America or Capital One. Okay, those are the only 2 choices that I have right now that I can use. So what we're going to do is, because this line of credit here is, the line is a lot higher than the balance that we have on it, we are going to actually roll in our Capital One into this line of credit. The Capital One card only has a $5,000 limit, so we can't do it in the reverse. Okay, we can't do it in the reverse. And we are going to be dealing with the Bank of America. Now, when you look at creating a plan for yourself, a Velocity Banking plan, I always want you guys to look at your payments because you want to take the highest payment to get that payment back to you as cash flow. The bigger payments help you work down your debts faster, all right? And so here, we are definitely going to take the Bank of America. It is at $215 a month. But our next would be our loan, okay? Our next one would be our loan. But that loan, we are going to let that one go for right now. And we're going to then concentrate on bringing these 2 together, all right? And the reason being is our interest that we're going to owe on this loan is actually less at this point. We've already paid the interest. So we're going to take care of the higher interest cards too. And if you add these 2 payments together, obviously they're going to be more than the 176 anyway. So we're going to get all that back to us as cash flow. So because we're dealing with credit cards, we have to do something special. We have what is called available income and chargeable expenses. Credit cards, when we run all of our income into the credit cards and you're paying all of your expenses out, you have to hold back certain payments into your checking account because you cannot pay them through lines of credit. Things you cannot pay through lines of credit, i.e. a credit card, would be other credit cards and loans. They don't allow you to pay those through credit cards. They just don't accept them that way. So you can't pay them that way. So what you have to do is leave that cash in your checking account to cover the non-chargeable expenses. Okay, so that's what you're going to be leaving in your checking account to cover those. So how then do we figure out what that's going to be and how do we know how much we can put on our cards, okay? So you have to figure it this way. We have what we call available income, okay? So it's our income and it is minus the non-chargeable expenses. So it's your income minus your non-chargeable expenses because clearly we have to hold them back into our checking account to be paid that way. So what I have here is my $4,300. And I have my two loans here, right? My mortgage and my car that add up to $1,372. So I'm going to take my $4,300. I'm going to subtract out the mortgage and the car because they're non-chargeables. And I'm going to subtract out this 176 here as well, okay? Now, I am not going to subtract these two out of my income. And why is that? Well, I'm not going to subtract it out of my income. Number one, because I'm using this Bank of America as the vehicle that I am going to be using as my debt destroyer, right? My debt weapon, my debt destroyer. So that means all of the income that I would have, held out to make that payment can actually go into that card. Okay. So all of my available income is going to go into that card. So that means that payment for this BOA card is satisfied once my income goes in. That satisfies or takes care of the payment. So I never owe that. Now, I don't owe this Capital One payment either because, well, I'm going to be pulling that Capital One balance into my credit card. All right, so that's going to come into my credit card. So then I don't owe it. So that frees up that cash flow for me as well. So what we get here, okay, so if we're looking at it, now remember, we've got the 4,300. I subtracted off the 1,372. I subtracted off this loan because I'm going to be letting this loan run at the time I take to combine these together and work my strategy. I can't do anything with that loan at this point because I can't bring it all into the card. It wouldn't fit, okay? So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let this one run. But what I am going to do, because I have a $12,000 limit, I am going to take an extra 1,000 and I'm going to slap it against this loan, okay, this personal loan to drop my balance. So that is the first step that I'm going to do. I have to move my balances over and I have to calculate exactly what total dollar amount I want to use to help me defeat these balances that I owe, right? So that's how I'm looking at this. So in my step number one here, what I'm doing is I'm taking the 7891, which is my Bank of America card. I'm taking 3,333 because remember, I said I was going to take an extra 1,000 and slap it against that loan. All right. So it's the 233, okay, 2,333 plus the 1,000 gives me the 3,333. Now, when you move balances from one card to another, there is a balance transfer fee. And it's anywhere from 5,000 to zero. I've actually seen them be zero, and that's fantastic when that happens. But that is not the case, especially dealing with BOA. Theirs is 4%. So I have to calculate that, and I have to add that into my total balance of what I'm moving, what my total balance will be. I have to calculate the 4% on the money that I'm moving, okay, because Bank of America charges me. So if I take 3,333 and I multiply it by 4%, I'm going to get 133.32. Okay, so I just rounded. So I have 133 that I'm bringing over. Okay, so I now have my 7891 plus the 3,333. So my total balance that I'm going to be working through my Bank of America card is going to be 11,224 plus the 133 from my balance transfer, which means my new balance that I'm going to work with for working down my strategy, my velocity banking total, is going to be $11,357. Okay. Remember that $1,000 is going over to pay on this loan. So it's going to drop it to 43.37 immediately as soon as I put that on there. Okay. So now I'm going to start my strategy. Okay. Now remember, I have to pay this. So I'm still taking the 176 is still coming out of my income to be paid to pay that loan. It's going through my checking account to be paid there. So we also have something called chargeable expenses. So now I know what my starting balance is. I know what my available income is, which is the purple here. Purple is always income. So I know what my income is that's available. Now I have to figure out what my chargeable expenses are because my chargeable expenses also are going to be run through that credit card to help me defeat the interest, okay? So chargeable expenses is just another calculation. It's the 4,100. So it's your chargeable expenses is your 4,100 minus all of the non-chargeables. So your total expenses minus the non-chargeables. So I've got 4,100 minus the 1,372 minus the 215. It's still a non-chargeable, okay? Minus the 70 because it's a non-chargeable, minus the 176 because again, it's a non-chargeable. I can't subtract them, in other words, from two places. So if I leave them in my chargeable expenses, they always must be there. The only thing I can add back then is it into my income per se, right? So I either have to do one or the other. So in this case, I like to leave it in my income and just not subtract it from my income, but we know that they're chargeable expenses, so I leave them there. So my chargeable expenses are 2,267, and that is depicted here, okay? So now we know what our income is, our available income. We know what our chargeable expenses are. So now we're going to go ahead and work this strategy down of these two cards that we have rolled into one, into that BOA card, all right? So I start with 11,357. I put my income in. It drops me to 8,605. Then I know that I'm going to be charging my card and running my expenses out of this card. So I'm adding back in $2,267. But I also have interest because this Bank of America card is charging me 23% interest. So I have to figure that as well. So how do I do that when my balances are going to change month to month? And that is what's beautiful about velocity banking. Because your balances are continuously dropping, so is your interest. So let's figure it out for our first month. So again, average daily balance. We have to figure out what the average is now for that first month, knowing that I'm starting with 11,357. Okay, so 11,357. And I'm going to take my high balance, I'm going to add it to the low balance. The low balance meaning after I put my income in, it drops me to 8605. So I'm going to take my high balance plus my 8605 equals 19,962, right? 19,962. And then I'm going to divide that by 2 to get my average, which is 99.81. So then I'm going to multiply that by my interest rate, right? By my interest rate. And that's going to give me 22.95. Wait a minute, Jen, I thought you said it was 191. Well, it is, because we have to then divide that by 12, which equals our 191. Why are we dividing it by 12? Again, the number that was prior to this was for an entire year's worth of interest at that average. But we know we're only doing it for this first month because the next month we're going to do this all over again. Our income is going to come in. It's going to drop us again. And then we're going to recalculate, right? So we know that's happening. So every month, that would be how you calculate your interest. Or you sit down and you figure out your entire, strategy, how long it's going to take, and then you know what your approximate interest is going to be. Okay, so now that is month one. Coming into month two, our income comes in, drops us to 8311. We add back in our expenses. We add back in our interest. It brings us to 10,763. Now, we have to run checks and figure out, are we going in the right direction or are we going in the wrong direction? Because if we're going in the wrong direction, we got a problem, right? Something's wrong. We miscalculated something, or our strategy won't work because we can't overcome the interest. That would be when a strategy might not work. So 10,763, is that greater or less than the 1163? Well, in my mind, it is less than. So our strategy is working. We are going in the right direction. So this will work. And it does work, because how long does it take me to get through this? Okay, so remember, we only have our two cards in this. We're still paying our loan off to the side. It has been running the same amount of time as this has been running. So here's the thing. To run this all out, it would take, I think, 24 months. We are not going to take 24 months because something's going to happen at 12 months. At 12 months, we are going to bring in our balance from our loan, okay? Remember, we dropped it by $1,000. It has been going for the 12 months that we have been running this strategy. So here's how this looks. So at 12 months, our balance on our BOA card is $7,430. That is what we've worked it down to. So we are at a point where we definitely can bring in our loan balance, because at 12 months, okay, that is at $2,665. All right. Again, remember that $1,000 went to pay down the loan. So it was started at $43.37. And then 12 months goes by, and now it's down to $26,665. $26,665. All right. So and we've also spent interest on this as it's been running, and that was $295. Remember, this loan started a couple years ago. We still have 2 years and 8 months left. So we paid the highest interest the first couple months of that loan. And we'll never get that back. So we can't cry about it at this point, but we can take care of what's coming, okay? And that's what we're doing. So the $295 was spent up to get to this point, the $2,665. So now I'm going to take my $2,665 and I'm going to add it to the ending 12-month balance of my Bank of America card. So now when I add those two together, thus I have now gotten rid of my loan, haven't I? Because I rolled it right into that card. So that loan is coming into the card. So we put this in, okay? So we put the 2665 in. And you know what I didn't do, you guys? I didn't calculate the balance transfer fee. Let me do that. Okay, so times, what are we at? Okay. All right, so 106. So we'll have to add 106 onto our totals at the end. Sorry, my bad. So 106. Let me just add that. See, I try not to forget things, but I'm human and it happens. So just remember, you're still going to have that balance transfer fee of 4%. So whatever you're bringing over onto the BOA card, you have to calculate that in. So we're going to add that into the end. Now we have 2665 plus the 7430 takes us to 10,095. Now our income comes in at 2928. Wait a minute. That's different, isn't it? Why is our income more? Well, our income is more because this 176 now doesn't have to be subtracted out of our income. We can leave it in our income because that loan is now on my Bank of America card. So I can give myself a raise, right? I can give myself a raise of the 176. So I've done that. So the 10,095, you bring in the 2928, drops us to 7167. Our expenses come out. The expenses are the same. Remember, the expenses, they're always expenses, right? The non-chargeables are always non-chargeables. So that means our chargeable expenses aren't going to change. That's 2267. Now we add in the interest, which is 165. And oh my gosh, doesn't it look just like this, right? Because those are the numbers that I use to show you our freedom graph, our debt freedom graph. So the spoiler was this takes 13 months. So now you know it takes 13 months to finish this plan, the second step of our plan, step 2, okay? So again, I'm running it down the exact same way I ran this down, but now it takes me 13 months, okay? And so if it takes me 13 months, that means I have to add in all of my interest that I have had going along this time, right? So if we look at this, now we have, what do we have here? So we have the 7430, okay, was what our balance was at 12 months. When we started this, our interest ended up at 1,893. So our balance at 12 months was 7430. The total interest spent was 1893. So we have to use that number. We have to add our interests up. We know that at 12 months, this loan was 2665 and we had spent 295 in interest. So there is that interest. And we know that this takes us 13 months and it costs us $1,349 in interest. So I need to add those all up, and I did, and I got 3537. But wait, I forgot to add the balance transfer fee. So I'm going to add that in to tell you what exactly our interest is. Okay, so plus 106. So 3643. Okay, so it took 25 months and 3643. Now, 25 months. Remember, it took 12 months here. It took 13 months here to finish this. So that is 2 years, a smidge over 2 years, and it costs us $36.43, so $3,643 in interest. What did it cost us over here? Well, the Bank of America card by itself at $215 was going to take us 5 years and 5 months and cost us $58.75. That's not even including the other 2 loans, now is it? And let's see, what is the next time frame? Well, we've got 4 years and 8 months. Okay, 4 years and 8 months. Capital One, it was going to be $2,333 is what we owed. We were going to pay 100 or 1550, so we can just tack that right on, right? And it would have taken 4 years and 8 months, so a little less than this one. And then we have our loan, 2 years and 8 months. It's still, to finish out that loan, it still took us longer than it did to run the velocity banking strategy, get them out of all of their debt except for these two here, the mortgage and the car, which is $1,372 a month. And now they have cash flow, significant cash flow to work with. We can now take this 461 and add it to our 200, so they have over $600 in cash flow. So it is up to them at this point. If they want to take care of their car or their mortgage, they most certainly can, especially if they have cards that allow them convenience checks that they can pull balances off of it, slap it down on that car or that mortgage, and push them further ahead in getting out of the amortized loans. You guys, that is why I do velocity banking. That is why my husband Dan does velocity banking. And that is why we are here bringing you velocity banking, because it works and it causes less stress. When you guys use lines of credit and you're putting income into your line of credit, all is not lost. You still have purchasing power. When you put extra income into a loan, let's say you have extra, this $200 a month that they have extra, if they were to put that into a loan, they can't go get it back. It's gone. Done. They can't get it back now, can they? But with lines of credit, you have purchasing power. You have the ability to take money and use it as needed. And that's another reason why velocity banking works so well, especially when we're in a world when you never know what's going to happen next, right? You just don't. So sometimes you have to have purchasing power or the availability to get extra money. Again, thank you guys for stopping by, for learning about velocity banking. We do this for you. We bring this for you. Why do we do it? Because we are one of you, you guys. We've been there, we've done that. We know what it's like, okay? We do it because we realized how powerful this message is. So if you want extra help, you can always email us at info@paydowndebtsolutions.com. Our worksheets to help you organize your debt, which is number 1 in our 3 steps. Organize, identify, and implement. Those are our 3 steps. Number 1 is organize. That is probably the most important step, because if you don't know what you have going out, most of you know what's coming in, but most of you have no idea what's going out because you're putting blinders on, because that's easier than dealing with reality. I know, because I did it. So trust me though, you guys need to learn and figure out what you owe out there so we can build a strategy, so you can build yourself a strategy, all right? So have a great day. Hope you learned something today, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great one.